Hi everyone, this is Reema here, your biology educator from V Learning. So as you know that V Learning is an online educational platform where we provide quality education for all. So to get all the benefits from our channel, don't forget to visit to our website, that is www.v-learning.in, where you will be getting all the PDF notes, the live classes and also the pre-recorded videos. So without any delay, let's begin today's session. So in our last class, we have completed chapter number 10, right? So where you have learned about the cell cycle and cell division, isn't it? So this is all about plants. So this is the unit number 4, and under this unit number 4, you are going to learn all about the plant physiology, okay? So under unit 4, you have got how many chapters? You have 5 chapters, right? So we are going to begin with the chapter number 11, which is the transport in plants, okay? So that is today will be your lecture number 1. So what you are going to study under this chapter, that is transport in plants. Now what do you mean by transport? Okay, what do you mean by transport? Transport means carrying something, right? So what is being carried in the plants? So you know that we all human beings, we all living organisms needs nutrition for our growth and development, isn't it? So similarly, the plants also needs nutrition for its growth and development. So it needs water, it needs various macro and micro nutrients, right? Various elements like nitrogen, phosphorus, carbon. So for its growth and division. So from where it gets? It gets all these things from the soil. Okay. So various elements, various mineral elements are present in the soil, right? So the plants need to uptake that with the help of the roots. So again, the plants need various ions, right? Various ions like potassium ions. Okay. So they need to uptake it with the help of the roots, and also the plant needs one important essential thing is water, right? So they uptake it with the help of the roots, isn't it? So after that, what happens? It needs to be transported to different parts of the plants, right? So how it is being transported? So in case of plants, they have got various means of transport with the help of which they transfer all this mineral nutrition. So under this chapter, what you are going to learn is three things you will learn, that is the means of transport, plant water relationship, and long distance transport of water. Okay, so what you are going to learn under this chapter? Under this chapter, you will be learning about what? You will be learning about, that is, means of transport, then second thing you will learn is plant water relationship, okay. And third thing you will learn is long distance transport of water, long distance transport transport of water. All right, so these are the things you are going to learn under this chapter number 11. Now today we are going to cover this topic, that is the means of transport in plants. In today's class we are going to cover the topic, that is means of transport in plants. So there are various means, okay? So there are various means, that is by the process of diffusion, okay? Facilitated diffusion, active transport. So by the process of this, the minerals are being transported to the plants, okay? Now see, let me show you. If this is a plant, it is having various leaves. So the plant is preparing the food where the plant is preparing the food in the leaves. As you know that the plant prepares food in the leaves. So in the leaves, the plant is preparing food, and the food need to supply to all the parts of the plant, right? So it supplies in the form of glucose or sucrose. Okay, it supplies in the form of, that is, glucose or sucrose or fructose. So the food which is glucose or sucrose, it needs to transport it to all the parts of the plant, not only the leaves, right? See, if the leaf is getting the nutrition, what about the other parts, right? So here in the roots, so the plant has got roots, right? So through the roots, okay, from the soil, what happens? The water, right? Again, various ions, right? Various ions, then various minerals which are present, like carbon, nitrogen, right? Phosphorus, okay? So these are essential for the growth of the plant. So these are taken up with the help of what? With the help of roots. So after that, this also needs to be transported, right? So this also needs to be transported to various parts of the plants, isn't it? So you have studied that plant has got vascular tissues, right? What are the vascular tissues? That is xylem and phloem, right? So the plant has got various vascular tissues, that is xylem and phloem. So xylem and phloem are the two vascular tissues which are responsible for the transportation. But how it transports? It transports, that is, it transports through the diffusion. These are the various means, okay? It transports by following the active transport. There are some molecules, okay? There are some molecules which do not want to pass through the membrane, which they cannot pass through the membrane. For them some channel proteins, or for them some carrier proteins are necessary. That is, with the help of those channel proteins, they can cross the plasma membrane. We'll discuss it in the next topic, okay? So see, so again, the plants, they also need hormones, right? So the different parts of the plants, like the root, okay, the root produces what? The root produces auxin, okay, which is responsible for growth and development. So the different parts of the plants, it produce hormones also, right? So it produces hormones also, isn't it? So these hormones, some of the hormones are produced in the roots, some are produced in the shoot tip. So this needs to be transported, right? So xylem is responsible only for unidirectional transport of water. What? Unidirectional, okay? Unidirectional, okay? Xylem is responsible for only unidirectional transport of water, whereas phloem is responsible for the bidirectional transport of water. Bidirectional, bidirectional transport of water. Okay. So xylem can only transport the water from the roots to the stem. Okay. So it is unidirectional. Whereas the phloem, that is the leaves where the food is being prepared, right? So the phloem carries the food and transports in a bidirectional manner. So see what is being said in transportation in plants. So transportation in plants, as I've said, that it takes place through xylem and phloem. All right, xylem is responsible for transport of water, whereas phloem is responsible for transportation of food, right? So next, transport of a longer distance proceeds through the vascular system. That is the xylem and phloem, which are the two vascular system, and it's called translocation. Now, what is this translocation? Translocation means what? Translocation means the transfer of the food material through the vascular tissues, that is xylem and phloem. That is called as translocation. That is called as translocation. Clear? Next, in rooted plants, transport in xylem, that is water and minerals. So xylem is responsible for transporting water and mineral, is essentially unidirectional. As I have said you that xylem transports the water and minerals only in one direction. Okay, so unidirectional. So the transport with the help of xylem is what? Transport with the help of xylem is unidirectional. Unidirectional. Clear? Now, from roots to the stem. From roots to the stems. Okay, from where? From roots to the stem, the xylem transports the water and minerals. Now, organic and the mineral nutrients, however, undergo multi-directional transport. So what is this multi-directional transport? That is phloem. Okay, phloem is responsible for transporting the organic and the inorganic materials. So it goes the bidirectional or multi-directional way. Okay. Next, see, the mineral nutrients are taken up by the roots and transported upwards into the stem, leaves, and the growing regions. Okay, so the mineral nutrients. So if this is a plant, so the mineral nutrients are taken up with the help of the roots and transported upwards. So transported upwards towards what? Towards the stem, towards the stem, then what? Then also to the various parts of the leaves. Okay, so how the minerals are transported, in which direction it is transported? Upwards. Okay, it is transported upwards. The minerals are transported from the soil towards, that is in upward direction, to the stems and also to the leaves and also to the growing regions of the plants. So hormones. So as I said, that plants also require hormones, right? Various hormones they need. Like what is the hormone? Hormone are the chemicals. Okay, hormone are the essential chemicals which are responsible for the control and coordination. Okay, control and coordination in an organism. So likewise, the plants also need various hormones like auxin, cytokinin, gibberellin, okay, thylline. So we will study about hormone in chapter number 15. So for now, that remember that hormones are very, very much essential. And different parts of the plants, they produce hormones in different location, right? So the hormones of the plant growth regulators are other chemical stimuli. They're also transported through very small amounts. Okay, so they also are being transported in the plants in very small amount. Okay, so they are transported in small amount, right? So sometimes a strictly polarized or unidirectional manner from where they are synthesized to other parts. So how they are transported in unidirectional or the polarized manner, right? Now, we are into the topic that is the means of transport. So how this transportation is taking place basically? So it takes place by following this three process. What are the three process? That is diffusion, facilitated diffusion, and active transport. Now, this facilitated diffusion is again divided into, okay, so this facilitated diffusion is again divided into, uh, yeah, simple, okay, and passive, okay. Yes, 1 minute, sorry. Yes. Now, sorry, this facilitated diffusion, okay, this facilitated diffusion, it requires protein. Sorry, it requires proteins. So it requires two proteins. One is channel protein. Okay, one is channel protein. One is channel protein, and another one is carrier protein. So there are some molecules which cannot pass the plasma membrane. So they require help. Okay, facilitated. Facilitate means helping. Okay, so there are some proteins who facilitates the molecules to cross the plasma membrane. So there are various protein channels. Okay, there are various channels. So one is channel protein and another one is carrier protein. So they help the molecules to cross the plasma membrane. So diffusion. So diffusion is nothing but the movement of the molecules from a region of higher concentration to lower concentration, okay, in the membrane. That is diffusion. And in case of diffusion, it is a slow process, and the diffusion also depends upon the gradient concentration. Okay, now here there is no requirement of ATP, that is energy is not required. Okay, but here in the active transportation, energy is required. Okay, this is against the gradient concentration. Okay, this active transport is against the gradient concentration. Now let us learn one by one. Okay, now see what happens in case of this means of transport. Before that, you should know that how the molecules are being crossed, okay, how the molecules are being transported. As you have studied in chapter number 8, that cell, isn't it? So cell has got cell membrane or not, right? Or plasma membrane we call it. So you have seen that the plasma membrane, it helps in the transportation of molecules, right? So it helps in the transportation of molecules. So see here, let us see the structure of the plasma membrane. If you see that, if this is a cell, right? So this is the outer membrane of the cell. The outer membrane of the cell, we call it as plasma membrane. What is that? Plasma membrane or cell membrane, right? Now, you have studied the structure of the plasma membrane. So, the plasma membrane composed of what? Composed of lipid, protein and carbohydrates. So, the major amount what is present in plasma membrane is lipid. Okay, plasma membrane is made up of phospholipid. Okay, it is made up of, that is, lipid and phosphate groups, and it is bilayer. Okay, bilayer of phosphates, isn't it? So, let us draw the structure of the plasma membrane. So if you see the plasma membrane structure, how it is, so it has got phosphate group like this, isn't it? So here, phosphate groups, these are lipids. So yes, these are hydrophobic tails, right? Now here, some carrier proteins will be there, okay? Some proteins, as you have seen, okay? Some proteins, it has got integral and peripheral proteins we have learned, right? So see, this is how the plasma membrane looks like, right? So what are this? This is what and this is what? This is what and this is what? This is what? This is a phosphate group. This is made up of phosphate, right? So this is what? This is the head and this is the tail, right? This is the head and this is the tail. It is made up of what? It is made up of phosphate, right? It is made up of phosphate, whereas it is made up of what? It is made up of lipid, right? So it is made up of lipid. So inside this plasma membrane, when you see that, mostly this is what? This is the lipid. It has got a lipid bilayer, right? So when a molecule it wants to cross. So this is the outer side, okay? So yes, now a molecule, it wants to come inside the plasma membrane. For example, oxygen, okay, these are small molecules which will easily get diffused, okay? For example, water, it wants to go inside the plasma membrane. Then carbon dioxide, okay, carbon dioxide, water, okay, these are the simple molecules which can diffuse easily, right? Which can diffuse easily through the plasma membrane. Now here, when you see that, it is made up of a lipid bilayer, right? So that is lipid bilayer, you can see here, isn't it? Now, if a molecule need to cross this, it should be soluble in the lipid, okay? Because here, what you can see is, it has got what? It has got that is, it has got hydrophobic tail, right? Which is made up of lipid. The tails are lipid. So, if a molecule, it wants to cross, it should be soluble in the lipid, okay? Then only it will be able to cross, okay? So the hydrophilic moiety, it pass difficulty in crossing the plasma membrane, okay? For them, they require some special help, okay? So so they can easily cross the plasma membrane. Now what happens in diffusion is, so in diffusion, the simple molecules can easily pass through the plasma membrane. So these are the simple molecules, right, which can easily cross the plasma membrane. So these molecules can easily cross the plasma membrane. So that is called as diffusion. Now see what is diffusion. So diffusion is what? It is passive. That is, movement by diffusion is passive and maybe from one part of the cell to the another. So diffusion can take place within the cell, okay, within the cell, that is inside the intracellular space also. Now it is very much essential for the cell to transport the to transport the minerals. Okay, diffusion is one of the important process. Now what happens is it is taking place from cell to cell or over short distance also. So it can take place between cell to cell or over short distance also. So say from the intercellular space of the leaf to the outside. Okay, from the intercellular space. Now if this is a leaf, now this is a leaf, okay, so from the intercellular space, okay, to the outside, okay, to the outside, okay. So yes, it can take place within a limited space also, right? So no energy expenditure takes place. This is very, very important. That is, here there is no involvement of ATP. ATP is not used because this molecules, okay, it is easily passes, okay. So it is not against the concentration gradient. So ATP is not used here. So in diffusion, molecules move in a random fashion and the net result begins substances moving from one regions of higher concentration to the region of lower concentration. So what is this diffusion? You can write it down that diffusion is a process where molecules moves from region region of higher higher concentration to lower lower concentration. Okay, lower concentration. So the molecules will be crossing the plasma membrane from a region of higher concentration to the region of lower concentration. Now, what do you mean by this region of higher concentration to region of lower concentration? So, if this is a plasma membrane, so here there are various molecules in the intracellular space. Okay, so these molecules will move from higher concentration to lower concentration where there is low molecules. Clear? So the molecules will easily diffuse from the region of higher concentration to the lower concentration in case of diffusion. And diffusion is a slow process. Okay? Diffusion is what? Diffusion is a slow process. So diffusion is a slow process, as you can see, and it is non-dependent. It is not dependent on a living system. Okay, so it is not dependent. It does not depend on the living system. Now, diffusion is obvious in gases and liquids. Okay, diffusion does not take place in solid. Okay, in solid substance, diffusion will not take place. Why? For example, you keep at your home two plates, right? Two steel plates. They are solid, isn't it? So will the two plate, when you keep over one another, will they be moving one another? They can move one another? No, right? So they cannot push one another. But in case of gases, for example, at your home, you light up the agarbatti, right? So in case of that, you see that agarbatti is solid, but the gases which comes out, right? So that is what? That is diffusion taking place. That is from the region of high concentration, the molecules are moving, okay, and gets sprayed it to the room, isn't it? So that is also an example of diffusion. For example, in water, you put drop of oils, you'll see that the oils get spread, isn't it? So that is also diffusion, right? So diffusion only takes place in case of gases and liquids. And it is very, very much essential in case of the plants for the gaseous transportation. Okay, it is also responsible for gaseous transportation, that is in case of respiration. Okay, so diffusion plays a very, very important role in case of plants, and where it takes place only in case of gases and liquids, right? So it is only taking place in case of gases and liquids. So yes, clear up to this. Next, diffusion is very important to plants since it is the only means for the gaseous movement, as I have already said. So it is the only means for the gaseous movement in the plant. So diffusion rates are affected by. So what are the various rates? Okay, what are the various rates that affect the diffusion? The diffusion rates are affected by the concentration gradient, that is gradient concentration. Now, what do you mean by this gradient concentration? So, see, some of the molecules will be of smaller size, right? Some molecules will be of bigger size. So the smaller molecules can easily cross the plasma membrane, isn't it? But the bigger molecules will find difficulty, right? So the diffusion also depends upon the concentration gradient. Then it also depends upon the pressure, okay? That is the movement of molecules from high pressure to the low pressure, right? And also depends upon the temperature. And one more thing is what? One more thing is the permeability of the membrane. Now, what do you mean by this permeability of the membrane? Permeability means what? Membrane means here plasma membrane. Okay, the molecules need to cross the plasma membrane, remember. So we are talking about this transportation, and for the process of transportation, you know that this the outer covering of the cell is the plasma membrane, right? So to go inside the cells, the molecules should go inside the cell. Okay. So for that, the molecules need to cross the plasma membrane, isn't it? And you know that plasma membrane is permeable in nature. That is, it is semi-permeable. So it is not allowing all the molecules to get inside the cell, right? So it also depends upon the permeability. Is that clear? So these are the four things you should remember, that the diffusion depends upon the gradient concentration, then the permeability of the membrane, pressure and temperature, right? So yes. Now, facilitated diffusion. Now, what is this facilitated diffusion? Now, see here, as I said that plasma membrane is this, okay? This is plasma membrane. So, there are some molecules. So, here they need a protein. They need what? They need protein pumps, okay? They need carrier proteins to help the molecules to pass the plasma membrane. So see, this is also a protein, okay? Okay. Now, we are done with plasma membrane, okay? So there are some molecules, for example, sucrose, okay? For example, sucrose. So the sucrose, it is hydrophilic moiety. For example, it cannot pass the plasma membrane. Okay, sucrose or fructose, let's say, it cannot pass the plasma membrane. For that, they need special help. Facilitated means what? Facilitated means help. Okay, facilitated means help. So there are some molecules they cannot pass through the plasma membrane. They need special proteins. So what they need? They need special proteins. Okay. So what are the various proteins necessary here? So they need various special proteins like the in the form of channels. Okay, in the form of channels or carriers. Okay. So with the help of this carrier proteins or the channels, these molecules will be able to cross the plasma membrane. So see here. So yes, so with the help of what, as I said, that with the help of this channel proteins, okay. So with the help of these channels, okay, with the help of these channels, they will be able to cross the plasma membrane. So these channels, what they do is they create pores inside them, okay. So big pores they create, so the molecules can easily pass the plasma membrane. And this in case of this facilitated diffusion, this channels are specific, okay? This channels are specific. If it is passing only substance, for example, sucrose, it will not pass fructose, okay? It is specific, okay? It is specific. And again, there are some carrier proteins which take up the molecule, for example, O2. It will take up the molecule. So this is a carrier proteins, okay? It will change the shape. It will change the shape of that molecule. Okay, it will change the shape of the molecule and it will allow it to cross the plasma membrane. Okay, it is going to change the shape of the molecule, the carrier protein, and it easily passes the molecule to the plasma membrane. Is that clear? So that is the use of this, or that is the function of this facilitated diffusion. Now see, a gradient must already be present. So as I have said that gradient is very much essential for the process of diffusion. So gradient is very much essential. It should be present for the diffusion to occur. So the diffusion rate depends on the size of the substances. Obviously, smaller substances diffuses faster. So we have already said, we have already discussed that diffusion depends upon the gradient concentration. That is, some of the molecules will be smaller in size, whereas some will be larger in size, right? So it depends what? It depends on the size of the molecules. The smaller molecules can easily cross the plasma membrane. So as you've seen that there are some bigger molecules of higher gradient concentration. It cannot pass through the plasma membrane, so it requires some channels, okay? So it requires some carrier proteins. So with the help of this channels of carrier proteins, they will be passing the plasma membrane. Is that clear? So see here. So the diffusion of any substance across the membrane also depends on its solubility in lipids. So which I have already said that the plasma membrane is made up of what? It is made up of here. You can see that the lipid tails, right? So the plasma membrane is made up of phosphate and lipid. So here it is lipid which is hydrophobic, right? So hydrophobic means fear of water. So for passing any molecule, it should be soluble, okay? It should be soluble in lipid, okay? The molecule should be soluble in lipid. So if it is soluble in lipid, then only it can pass the plasma membrane. So it can cross the plasma membrane. Is that clear? So if it is soluble only, then only it can cross the plasma membrane. Yes. Next is what? The major constituent of the membrane, okay, which is the major constituent of the membrane. Then the substances soluble in lipids diffuse through the membrane faster, okay. Substances which are soluble, that the substances, okay, which will be soluble in the lipid can diffuse or can pass through the plasma membrane at a faster rate, okay, at a faster rate. Now next is what? The substances that have a hydrophilic moiety, okay, hydrophilic moiety. Now what do you mean by this hydrophilic? Hydrophilic means what? Hydrophilic means water loving, okay. So there are some substances which will be loving the water. They will get attached towards the hydrophilic moiety. So they won't be moving further. Okay, for them, what happens? They also require some help. Okay, they also require some help. Okay, so to cross the membrane, right? So they find difficulty to pass. Okay, so they find difficulty to pass through the membrane, and their movement has to be facilitated. Facilitated means support or help. Okay, so there are some molecules. What? There are some molecules which are hydrophilic. Okay, so they get attached towards the water molecules and they get stuck there. Okay, so for them they need some help so that they can cross the plasma membrane. Clear? So membrane proteins provide signs at which such molecules cross the membrane. So what proteins we have studied just now? The channel proteins and the carrier proteins you have seen here, right? The carrier proteins and the channel proteins, they facilitate the process of the depletion so that they can easily cross the plasma membrane, right? So yes, they do not set up a concentration gradient. A concentration gradient must already be present. So in case of facilitated diffusion, there must be a concentration gradient. All right. So there must be a concentration gradient for molecules to diffuse even if facilitated by the proteins. This process is called as facilitated diffusion. Now, what you should remember in facilitated diffusion? So, in facilitated diffusion, you should remember what? You should remember that there are some spatial proteins, okay? There are some spatial proteins, right? There are some spatial proteins which help in the transportation of what? Which helps in the transportation of molecules, and the concentration gradient should be present. So in case of facilitated diffusion, gradient, the concentration gradient should be present, okay? Should be present from before, okay? Should be present from before, all right? Now, what happens next in facilitated diffusion is, in facilitated diffusion, special proteins help to move the substances across the membrane without expenditure of ATP. So this also you should remember that here no ATP is used. Okay, what is being used here? Here only the special proteins. Here some special proteins are there which helps in the movement of these molecules, and there is no expenditure of ATP. Clear? So in case of diffusion, in case of facilitated diffusion, there is no expenditure of ATP. So facilitated diffusion cannot cause net transport of molecules from a lower to a higher concentration. This would require input of energy. So in case of facilitated diffusion, the molecules cannot be passed from lower concentration to higher concentration. Okay, the molecules cannot be passed from the lower concentration to higher concentration. Is that clear? Because for passing the molecules from lower concentration to higher concentration, it will require what? It will require the ATP molecule. It will require energy. Okay, this will be against the concentration gradient. This will be what? This will be against the concentration gradient. For against the concentration gradient, there should be expenditure of energy in the form of ATP molecule. So transport rate reaches a maximum when all the protein transporters are being used. Okay. So transportation rate will be maximum in case of plants when all the transport proteins in the plants are properly used. Okay. Are properly used by the plants. Yes. Next, what happens is, in facilitated diffusion, that is, it is very specific. Okay, remember this point. It is very specific. If it is allowing, if the protein is allowing only the sucrose molecule, so as we have seen, right, it will only allow those sucrose molecules through this gate or through this channel. So it is very much specific. Okay, it will not allow the glucose to cross through that channel protein. Okay, it is very specific. Remember this, it is very specific. It allows cell to select substances. So as I said that it will allow the cell to select various substances for uptake, and it is sensitive to inhibitors which react with protein side chains. Okay, it is what? It is sensitive to the inhibitors. Next is what? The proteins from the channels in the membrane for molecules to pass through. So the proteins, what they do, they form various channels. Okay. So as we have seen here, the proteins, so see here, they form various channels, right? Through which the molecules can pass across the plasma membrane. Is that clear? So next, some channels are always open, whereas some will be controlled. So some protein channels will be open, some will be controlled, and some are large, allowing variety of molecules to cross. So some of the protein channels are what? Some of the protein channels are open, and some of the protein channels are large, which will allow variety of molecules to pass through it. Okay, so this is all about what? This is all about what we have learned is the facilitated diffusion. Now, what is this porins? Okay, as we are talking about this proteins, right? So as we're talking about these proteins, porins are nothing but they are the proteins. Okay, so they are the proteins which create holes inside the plasma membrane of the plastid or the mitochondria or other cell. Okay, so what they do, they are special type of proteins. They will be creating holes. Okay, so see, if this is the plasma membrane, This is the plasma membrane, and this is what? This is the protein. So here they will create what? They will create holes. Okay, they will create holes. So these are what? These are porins. Okay, porins are what? These are nothing but the proteins. Okay, what they do? They create holes so that the molecules can easily pass through the membrane. So through these pores, the molecules will be passing through the through the through the plasma membrane. So the molecules can easily diffuse through the plasma membrane. Okay, the molecules can easily come out. So through this pores, is that clear? So porins are nothing but these are the proteins. What they do? These are the proteins that form huge pores in the outer membrane of the plastid, and plastids, mitochondria, and some bacteria allow the molecules up to the size of small proteins to pass through them. Is that clear? So they are nothing but they create holes, okay, in the plasma membrane of mitochondria, plastid, and bacteria. So they are what? They are proteins. Clear? They are the proteins. So they are the transport proteins. Okay, they are the transport proteins that rotates and release the molecule inside the cell. As we were talking about the carrier proteins, isn't it? Here we talked about the carrier proteins. So these carrier proteins are nothing but the porins. Okay, what they do, they get the molecules. Okay, they will catch the molecule here and they took it inside. Okay, these are the carrier proteins. They will catch the molecule and they will took inside them, and they will change the shape. Okay, what they do, they will change the shape, and after changing the shape they will again send back to the plasma membrane, and through it they can easily pass through. Okay, through it, for example oxygen, it can easily cross the plasma membrane. So this is what these carrier proteins are, nothing but the porins. Okay, so yes, now, for example, water channels, okay, made up of 8 different types of proteins, which is known as aqua proteins. So see, this is the picture from your ncrt. It is nothing but very, very simple, where the molecules are coming, and it is with the help of the protein channel, it is being, it is being sent from outer side of the membrane to the inner side, and it is transported. These are pink color. What you can see, these are the transport proteins. Okay, these are the transport proteins which are transporting what? Which are transporting the molecules. And this is the inner side of the cell, and this is the outer side of the cell. Okay, so this is the outer cell from where the molecules are coming, okay, and being transported here. That is the inner side. Is that clear? So this is what? This is facilitated diffusion, where the molecules are transported with the help of the transport proteins. All right. So with the help of the transport proteins, okay, the molecules, they need help. So they need help what? In the form of transport proteins. Is that clear? So yes, now let us learn the passive symport and antiport. So what is this passive symport and antiport? Now as you can see in this picture, when the molecules are moving in one direction, when the molecules are crossing the plasma membrane in one direction, that is called as what? That is called as uniport. Okay, and when the molecules are crossing, okay, when the molecules are crossing in the opposite direction, that is called as antiport. And when the molecules are crossing, okay, both the molecules are crossing in the same direction. Okay, so both the molecules A and D are crossing in the same direction through the plasma membrane, that is called as symport. Okay, antiport means molecules are crossing in the opposite direction. Your friend is going this way, we are going in the opposite way. That is antiport, right? So next, you see here, if this is what? This is the plasma membrane, let's say. Okay. So the molecules, how it is transported through the plasma membrane? Through the plasma membrane, the molecules are transported in a single direction. Okay, that is what? That is uniport, right? Next, what happens if the molecules are transported through the plasma membrane in the opposite direction? That is what? That is antiport. Okay, that is antiport. Then, if the molecules are transported through the plasma membrane in the same direction, that is symport. Okay, that is symport. Is that clear? So this is what passive symport and antiports. Okay, the direction of the molecules. Okay, the direction of the molecules to the plasma membrane. You can note down the definition. Symport means the same direction. Okay, both the molecules here, two molecules. Okay, both the molecules. Okay, will be transported. Antiport means what? Both the molecules in the opposite directions. Clear? Next, uniport means molecules moves across the membrane independent of other molecules. Okay, so it is independent. Okay, it can move independently. All right, so that is uniport. Okay, so these are the three ports. Okay, for transportation, three ways by which molecules are transported. Now, next, let us learn the active transport. What is this active transport? Okay, now see here, this is a plasma membrane. Okay, okay, this is a plasma membrane. This is a protein. Here also, the phosphate and the lipid groups are present. So, yes. So, this is the plasma membrane. Okay. Now, what happens in case of active transport is there is expenditure of ATP. ATP, okay, there is expenditure of ATP. And this active transport is against the concentration, concentration gradient. It is against the concentration gradient. Now, what do you mean by this concentration gradient? Concentration gradient means it can move the molecules from lower concentration to higher concentration. Okay, so it can move the molecules from lower concentration to higher concentration. Is that clear? It can move the molecules to from lower concentration to higher concentration here. Now, for example, this plasma membrane, okay, and inside the cell requires what? This is the cell, this is a lumen, okay, and the cell requires what? The cell has potassium ions, okay. So, through the active transport, the various ions are being transported, okay. Various ions, the most majority, that is ion which is present, the most major amount of ion which is present in plant is the potassium ion. Okay, is the potassium ion. So this potassium ion, it is present here. Okay, it is present here. Now the cell also, it is present in the here also. Okay, it is present in the outside. Okay, and this is inside the cell. This is inner membrane of the cell. Okay, this is inner membrane of the cell, and this is outer membrane. Okay, this is outer membrane. All right, where the molecules will be coming and crossing the plasma membrane. So see here what happens. It is present in low concentration. It is present in lower concentration, whereas it is present in higher concentration, right? It is present in higher concentration. As I said that the molecules can move from lower concentration to higher concentration, right? So there requires the expenditure of ATP. So what ATP is being used here? ATP is being reduced to ADP. Okay. So see here the that is the potassium ion. Okay, the potassium ion, it does not move inside, this doesn't want to go inside the cell, because see there are already so many potassium ions, right? So it doesn't want to go, but it can be taken up without its wish, that is against the concentration gradient. The cell can, that is there are some channels. Okay, there are some channel proteins which are known as Na plus K plus pump. Okay, that is Na plus K plus pump. Okay, so these are the pump, Na plus K plus pump. This can take the ions, that is the potassium ions, without its will. willed. Okay, it is not willing to go inside the cell because there is already potassium ion, right? So that is not required, but it can take with the help it can be taken with the help of this pump. Okay, so the potassium ion can be moved from lower concentration to lower concentration to higher concentration. Okay, so it can be taken from lower concentration to higher concentration, and here ATP is being used. Okay, that is energy is being used in this process. So ATP is being used, and 3 Na plus is taken out of the cell, and 2 K plus, that is potassium ion, is taken inside the cell using this Na plus K plus pump. Is that clear? So this Na plus K plus pump, using this 3 Na plus, okay, is being taken outside the cell, and 2 K plus is being taken inside the cell. So there are special protein pumps which I said that Na plus K plus pump. Okay, what is that pump? Special protein pump used in active transport is Na plus K plus pump. Okay, and it is against the concentration gradient. This active transport is what? This active transport is against the concentration gradient, and here there is involvement of ATP. Okay, and there is uphill transportation takes place. Okay, so in case of this, that is from a lower concentration to higher concentration, right? And we call this type of transportation, that is from lower to higher, as uphill transport. Okay, it is called as uphill transport. Uphill transport. Is that clear? That is, the molecules are moving from lower concentration to higher concentration, which is known as uphill transport. So let us see that active transport uses energy to pump the molecules against a concentration gradient. So you know that it is already, we have studied that it is against the concentration gradient. So those molecules which are against the concentration gradient, the active transport use energy in the form of ATP to pump these molecules using a special pump. Okay, special protein pump, that is Na plus K plus pump. So active transport is carried out by the membrane proteins. Okay, by the membrane proteins. Hence, different proteins in the membrane play important role in both active and passive transport. And these pumps are nothing. These pumps are proteins. Which pumps? Na plus K plus. Okay, these pumps are nothing but these are proteins pumps that uses energy to carry the substances across the cell membrane. These pumps can transport the substances from a lower to a higher concentration. So you have seen that these pumps are transporting the molecules from a lower to a higher concentration, like lower to higher concentration with the help of this Na plus K plus pump. And this is what this is called as the uphill transport. All right, this type of transportation is known as uphill transport. So this is all about what we have learned about the various means of transport, that is the diffusion, facilitated diffusion, and active transport. Okay, so this is the transport, this is the process, how the molecules, how the ions, how the hormones are being transported in the plants. Now let us see the comparison between three types of transport. So see here, in simple diffusion, what you see, that is, it requires membrane proteins or not? No, right? It doesn't require membrane protein, but facilitated diffusion requires membrane protein in the form of carriers, isn't it? Transport proteins. And here also we need the membrane proteins. Now it is highly selective. No, it is not selective. So diffusion, through diffusion, anything can pass. Okay, it is not that much selective, but facilitated and active transport, it is highly selective. It is selective. It selects the specific molecules. Okay, and transports saturates. Okay, no, and here yes. So more the transport proteins are being used, the more the transportation will takes place. So uphill transport, no. Uphill transport, no. But here the uphill transport, that is from lower concentration to higher concentration, is called as uphill transport. Okay, and requires that ATP, no. In simple diffusion, no ATP is required. In facilitated diffusion, no ATP is required. But where ATP is required? ATP is required where the molecules need to be transported against the concentration gradient, that is here, isn't it? that is active transport. So this is the comparison. So this is all about what we have learned, that means of transport in plant in today's session, right? In the next session, we will be continuing with the plant water relationship. Okay. So if you like this video, so do like it and also share it with others. So I'll meet you in my next class. Till then, take care and bye bye.